but welcome to the hustings tonight. My name is Jonathan Tame. I'm the host for this evening, and behind the scenes helping me is Marcus Pickering. The format for this evening is as follows. So first, the welcome to our three candidates who are standing for the County Councillor post. So we've got Lara Davenport-Ray, Stephen Ferguson and Sam Collins. What I'm going to do is ask each of them to, in 5 minutes, tell us why who they are, introduce themselves and say why they are standing, what they'd like to accomplish and achieve if they were elected to County Councillor. And after that, we have got around half an hour for questions which have been sent in, and we've prepared a number of those. And Marcus is going to be putting those questions, and I'm going to ask the candidates in different orders each time to respond to the questions. Possibly there might be some time for a little bit of feedback from the questioner. We'll see about that. And then after that, we've left the last 10 minutes or so for any other questions, open questions to come from any of you who are here. But what I'd ask you to do is to, if you want to ask another question or a follow-up question, to write it in the chat function. Okay? And Marcus is going to monitor the chat, and he will sort of feed back in any pertinent questions if we've got time. So please, if you can, keep your video on so we can see you and the candidates can see that there's friendly faces out there that they're speaking to, but it's fine if you want to turn your camera off, if you know, for any reasons, we all know. And do keep your microphone off unless we invite you to make a specific comment. Okay, well, before we actually listen to the candidates, we want to hear just very briefly what this job is actually about. And so we've asked David Wells, who is the County Councillor right now. He's a resident of Loves Farm, and he's the councillor for St Neots, Priory Park and Little Paxton. So David, welcome. Thanks for coming along. Do you want to tell us what this job is actually about? You need to just unmute yourself first.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Yes, as Jonathan said, I am a county councillor at the moment, though I'm standing down this time. So really wanted to say three things. One, I think this is an important role. If you look at your council tax bills, you'll see that the county council is responsible for about 70% of the council tax that's spent. Secondly, I'll tell you briefly what I think a councillor does. And thirdly, I'll tell you what I think the county council itself does. So a councillor does, to my mind, two things overall. One, they take part in the decision making of the council. The council, Cambridge County Council, is committee run, and all major decisions are made by either the main body or the committees. There's about 6 main meetings each year, and about each committee meets 1 time a month. Each councillor will typically be on at least 1 committee. These are typically about 2 to 3 hours during the day each month. And there's a significant amount of preparation, 300 to 400 pages of briefing notes. Secondly, the councillor is responsible for following up local issues with their community and individuals, making the connections with officers, taking things to the formal meetings of the council if necessary. So that's a bit about what the councillor does. What does the council do? As the name says, it covers the county, except it doesn't cover Peterborough. As you probably know, there are also separate town, parish councils and district councils and the Cambridgeshire Mayor. But the county council specifically covers roughly 3 areas: care, schools, and highways and other infrastructure. The care is by far the biggest money item. Within that, you've got looking after vulnerable adults, both those from learning difficulties, for example, older residents, and a whole range of care, ranging from at one extreme provision of residential care through a whole host of assistance. And the main aim of the council, if possible, is to get people to help themselves and avoid residential care. But there's a whole range of care provided. Similarly, for children, there is support for children with learning difficulties, but also those who are taken into care for social reasons, fostering. And historically, there's been, in recent years, a significant number of refugee children. The second area is schools. The schools are not funded directly by the council, and the day-to-day running of schools in Loves Farm and St Neots, for example, is all academies. But the council does have a significant role in planning of new schools. So one of the things, for example, on Loves Farm, we found there weren't enough school places. The county, while I was on the appropriate committee, revised its guidelines so that it will now build more school places associated with new houses. I was also, as an example, on the adults committee, and following up on a number of specific cases around support for adults as well. And the third area is around highways and flooding. So flooding is shared with the Environment Agency, but typically the county is the first point of contact for flooding issues. Obviously, the whole of Cambridgeshire, or a lot of Cambridgeshire, is the Ouse Valley, and a lot of it's below sea level. So flooding, keeping the drains clean, and that is a key issue. And making sure that that's done regularly is a key issue. Highways, the strategic side of highways and railways and things is done by the mayor, but maintenance of highways is the responsibility of the county council. And as a councillor, you often get involved in following up on potholes and specific problems with roads. There is also a local improvement schemes for highways, and I've been involved in following up a lot of those around parking, for example, in St Neots, and also crossings. So I hope that's a very quick run through of what a councillor does and some of the areas that they're involved in.
Yeah.
I would offer to answer questions, but then that would take away time from others, so I won't.
Exactly. Thank you so much, David. That's been really helpful. Just to give a big picture overview, it is complex. There's a lot of work. And so let's hear from our three candidates. I'm going to ask them to give this 5-minute presentation each in the order that they'll be on the ballot paper. So let's start with Sam.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much, Jonathan, for chairing this evening, and Marcus for setting it up. It's fantastic that we can do this hustings. I think this is the only chance that the three candidates will have to actually engage with each other over the course of this campaign. So it's fantastic that this has been set up. We've been given reasonably strict marching orders on exactly how to introduce ourselves. So I will just give you a little brief overview of myself, and then talk about why St Neots East, why Loves Farm, what drives me to represent the local community, and finally talk about some of the guiding principles and ambitions that I have for the division during the next 4 years, should I be elected. So for those of you who don't know me, and I do see some friendly faces on the video, which is nice. I'm originally from New Zealand. I was born and bred in Christchurch, moved to the United Kingdom around about 11, 12 years ago, and have lived here since, except for Did you mean to mute me there?
No, just everyone who's coming in, please make sure your microphone is muted. Sorry, carry on, Sam.
Thank you. So I've been living in the United Kingdom since 2009, aside from a year when I went back to New Zealand after the Christchurch earthquake in 2011 to help with the immediate aftermath of the earthquake and the rebuilding effort. And during the time there, I actually stood for Parliament in New Zealand. Moved to St Neots 3 years ago, lived on Loves Farm until last year. It's a lovely community, but obviously I'll talk about that when I talk about why I want to represent the district. A little bit of introduction about my background. My background's mostly working in the charity and political sectors. I've worked for a congressman in Washington, DC, a couple of parliamentarians in New Zealand. I'm the advisor to the Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. And prior to that, I was the director of both the Hope Foundation for Street Children, which is a charity that helps street and slum children in Kolkata and West Bengal. And they're obviously doing a heck of a job at the moment with the resurgence of COVID. And also the director of the Age Endeavour Fellowship, which is a charity that looked at policy options for helping older people stay independent for longer, both in the workforce and staying in their own homes. Why do I want to represent Loves Farm? It's the division that we feel the most connection with, I suppose is the best way to put it. My wife was one of the first families to move in when it was being built. It's the place we first moved to when we came to St. Neots, and it's an area that we still feel a lot of attraction to. We have many friends and family who live on the estate. My niece and nephew attend Roundhouse School, and I still love the community, the Loves Farmhouse, where we went to a whiskey tasting and walked the dog walking community, which is I know a group that Stephen's also part of. And it's just a wonderful community, and I would really be honoured to represent you in the county council.
Great, thank you so much, Sam. Now over to Lara.
Apologies. Apologies, Jonathan. Actually, I accidentally muted Sam in full flow there, so he hadn't quite finished. Apologies, Sam. If you could just unmute yourself and carry on. Could I just ask everyone else who's joining the meeting just to make sure your microphones are muted, and then we'll avoid the interruptions. Apologies, Sam.
Thanks. Thank you. I was thinking I hadn't had a message saying that I was almost out of time. So, sorry, forgive me. Some of the guiding principles that I'm hoping to bring to representing Loves Farm in the council is choice. I want to, as far as available, give choice for residents and parents who live on Loves Farm. Doing the basics well. Keeping taxes low, and I see 30 seconds, so I will wrap up quickly saying my two main goals are working with the Police and Crime Commissioner to reduce crime on the estate and improve road safety on Loves Farm.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Sorry for the interruption again. So now it's Lara's turn. Tell us about yourself and why you want to stand.
Great. Well, yes, so I'm Lara, and I'm your Green Party candidate to represent you on the County Council. I'm American born, but I became a UK citizen in 2011, and I moved to Loves Farm in 2013. My son goes to Winteringham School, our new school. I work for a local charity, provide free money advice and debt advice to local people. If you recognize me, it might be from seeing each other around the community or from the school run. But also until recently, I worked at the National Trust's Wimpole estate and farm, and I find that many people recognize me, especially their children will recognize me from visits that they've made. So why do I want to represent you on the County Council? A friend recently told me that although she has strong opinions about the future of her community, she avoids politics because it makes her anxious and uncomfortable. I told her that if you elect someone you can identify with and share values with, then you can take a step back and entrust them to advocate on your behalf. But she was completely right. In the past local elections, she hadn't seen any candidates that she identified with or that seemed relevant to her. And I think that many people that live on Loves Farm identify with me. I share your concerns about the great changes that are going to happen to our landscape in the next few decades. I'm thinking about housing estates, road upgrades, and railways. I care about the friends and neighbors living among us who are struggling to make ends meet. I'm concerned about how our actions affect the environment, and I want our children to receive the best possible education. We need county council members who advocate for proactive rather than reactive decision-making. Each project, funding proposal, and decision should consider, how will this affect future generations? How will this help us reach our goals to become carbon neutral? The County Council is a corporate parent for the children of Cambridgeshire, making decisions on their behalf, and the Council should also be acting as a caring parent for future generations yet to come. One reason that I want to be your councillor is because I think the County Council is ignoring a powerful role that it could be taking in improving our welfare system. Our community includes a wide range of people, some comfortably off and some with very little. And our welfare system is broken. It's like a boat that's been patched and mended several times. The many patches are failing, the boat is sinking, and people are falling between the patches. But there is an alternative. Instead, every citizen could receive a small regular income, whether they're in work or not, to cover their most basic needs. The system is called just simply basic income. It would mean that training, education, and starting a business would suddenly become a possibility for many people who wouldn't have dreamed of it before. So what does any of this have to do with the County Council? Well, local governments are where welfare changes need to be tested and honed. Norwich and York City Councils, just a few among many, have resolved to back trials of this system of basic income. If city and town councils can do this, surely this is possible at the county level, and Cambridgeshire should be leading on this type of welfare reform. If elected, I pledge to push for the County Council to develop a trial of basic income. I also think the County Council are ignoring the severity of the climate crisis. They've not declared a climate emergency, and they're only holding themselves to a 2050 year target for being carbon neutral. If all bodies acted like this way, we could see another 1.5 degree increase in the Earth's temperature. This shows a real lack of understanding about how much this crisis really means to the people of Cambridgeshire. Members of the County Council need to demand a change, and I pledge to do that. The lack of transparency in how the County Council governs itself is also really troubling to me. Recent events have shown that private interests of councillors may have gone undeclared or not taken into consideration in decision-making. Some county councillors have chosen to review possible wrongdoing behind closed doors. I believe that when you have councillors tasked with making decisions on your behalf, they should do so with transparency, and I certainly pledge to do so. In answering your questions tonight, I might well mention things that do not fall under the jurisdiction of the County Council. From seeing your questions on social media, I know you're interested in a lot more topics. And I want you to know what my beliefs are if I'm going to represent you. Many friends and neighbors have asked me, Laura, why do you want to represent St. Neots right now? Well, the world has changed in the past year, and so have I. I don't want to go back to the same way of pre-pandemic living. I've witnessed an outpouring of community spirit. We've looked after each other with amazing compassion. We cannot let these great strides in human kindness go to waste. Most of all, I want to set a good example for the children around me. Children are intelligent, young people are smart, and they're listening and watching everything that we do. As your county councillor, I would ensure that this community would know who I am, feel comfortable contacting me about your ideas, and feel satisfied that I had advocated about your biggest concerns. It would truly be an honor to represent you on the County Council, and I'm really looking forward to answering the rest of your questions tonight.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lara. Brilliant. Let's go over now to our third candidate, Stephen Ferguson.
Hello everybody, my name's Stephen. I hope you all know me. I live on Love's Farm at the bottom of the Wiggly Path. So if you go down the Wiggly Path, you eventually reach a little wooden bridge, and my house is just opposite there. I've lived here for 7 years, and I live with my wife Charlotte, my son, and my 2 stepdaughters who both are at the Roundhouse Academy, and my 2 sausage dogs. And most days you can see me wandering around the estate, so either walking the dogs or running or on the school run. And in happier times, you could find me dominating the microphone at karaoke and cocktails at Love's Farmhouse. In 2018, I brought Parkrun to St. Neots by launching Pocket Parkrun, which is a free weekly running and walking event near the Willow Bridge. Since then, over 4,000 runners and walkers have completed our course, with that's over 18,000 5Ks between them. And it's become one of the biggest real-life communities in St. Neots. 3 years ago, I was elected by you as one of 4 town councillors for Love's Farm and Wintringham. And a year ago, I was given the great honour of being elected as mayor by my fellow councillors, the youngest ever mayor for St. Neots, and the first, and hopefully not the last, from St. Neots East. I describe myself as a serial volunteer, so as well as parkrun, I get myself involved in lots of things. I'm the co-founder of St Neots Flood Action and Liaison Group, along with Tim Wiley. We've had some big successes this year in dealing with the drainage problem in town. Co-founder in Pride in St Neots, which will hold Huntingdonshire's first ever LGBT Pride event in 2022. I'm a founding committee member of Waterside Green Energy, which is trying to build a water turbine on the Ouse. Founding member of Neots Zero, a community program to provide a pathway to net zero for residents and businesses in St Neots by 2030. I'm a co-founder of St Neots Inclusive Play Park Foundation, which is a charity which aims to include disability-friendly play equipment in the town. And this year I raised over £9,500 for local charities. As mayor, my biggest successes is that I think that I've led the town through one of the most difficult years in its history. Not only have we had the horrible toll of coronavirus, but we suffered a terrible house fire in which 2 young children died, and 3 separate serious flooding events, which affected many people profoundly. I'm the person who embarrassed the county council into cleaning the drains for the first time in 5 years, something which none of the county councils managed to do. I've championed the Market Square improvements and worked with HDC on the Future High Street Fund, making sure that residents' views are represented. And I've also spearheaded the revival of the farmers market. So when I was elected mayor, there's only 4 stalls. Now it's up to 26. On a Saturday when the farmers market's in town, we have a 40% increase in footfall. And I think as mayor and as a councillor, I've tried to define new standards of openness and accountability and public engagement. If you elect me, what I'd like to achieve in the next 4 years? Well, first of all, I'm going to put the climate emergency at the heart of every decision we make. By the end of this council, we're going to be at 2025. And as Lara said before, we need to be net zero by 2030. So we'll have just 5 years left after that. So we're going to have to make some pretty difficult decisions during this council. I want there to be, by the end of this term, a 3rd secondary school in St Neots. I'm a passionate supporter of the St Neots Academy Free School, which we're trying to bring to town. And if you look at the press release, you'll see my name all over it. I want to continue to help solve the drainage and flooding problems. We can't solve flooding. There's going to be more of it, but want to make sure that it doesn't impact residents so badly. And I want to inspire the community to engage with county council affairs. It's been one of my big achievements as a town councillor, is getting people talking about town council. And I want you to understand what happens at county council and take part in a decision maker, because that's what democracy is all about. So why vote for me? So I think in the last year, I've already demonstrated my passion and my work ethic and my commitment to St Neots and to the wider St Neots East and Gransden area. I believe in principles over politics. I'm an independent. I think that ideologies and tribalism have no place in local government. So I promise that every decision I make will be based on your best interests and not those of any political party. And like I said before, I believe in openness and accountability. I think I'm probably one of the most visible and approachable councillors the town has ever seen. You can contact me on social media, by email, by phone, and I always try to respond. And I want to carry that forward to the county council. I think most importantly, the reason why you should vote for me in this election is that I can win. The reason why there's no Liberal Democrats on the ballot paper is because the Liberal Democrats stood aside because they supported me to win the seat from the Conservatives. I think Lara's lovely. I think I agree with most of what she says, but the Greens haven't leafleted in the division. They have no chance of winning, and Labour candidate is just a paper candidate. So if you elect me, you can elect a councillor from Love's Farm with a proven track record as a councillor and a proven track record of community engagement. So please vote for me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, all 3 of you. We've got 3 wonderful candidates standing, and it's great to hear a little bit about your backgrounds, what motivates you, what you believe in. And now we're going to turn to some of the specific questions that have been submitted. And this is where I'm going to ask my fellow organizer Marcus to read out the question. The first one is on education. So over to you, Marcus.
Yes, our first question comes from Paul Gray and Eleanor Gray. And their question is, what are your views on secondary school provision at Longserns and Ernolf? And how do you see this changing or not in the future? Do you support the proposed new school? If so, where would you support its location?
Well, thank you, Paul and Eleanor, for that. We're just going to give really just about 1 minute for each candidate, and I'm going to call them Lara on this one.
Well, I think there's really 2 questions included there, which is hard in 1 minute. But the first one has to do with Longsands, which we are in the catchment area for. And I think some of the differences you've seen in the Ofsted results over time have happened at an interesting point. where they changed to academy system, currently the Australia Academy Trust, and also when they felt a lot of population growth. So the problem with Australia is that they are managing both of the secondary schools in St. Neots. And because of the odd way that the academy system works, they almost operate in a market system. So if you want your child to go to a school in St. Neots and you don't like the provision they're getting, you don't have any other option to go to. So I think Longsands is only going to get better when there is a third school in St. Neots. The second question is, where do I think it should be sited? Number one, I think we need a school with a third school. If the site can be found in the east of the railway line, then I would definitely support it. But if sites can only be found elsewhere, then I'm supportive of wherever it's going to be.
Great, thank you, Lara. Stephen.
I'm going to be blunt. St. Neots parents have the choice of two of the worst performing schools in the county. I appreciate all the hard work's been done at Longsands and Ernoff, but it's not good enough. So if you lived in Buckton, like Sam does, you'd have a choice of two good Ofsted schools in Huntingdon. St. Ives residents also have a good Ofsted school, Ofsted rated school. Both Ernoff and Longsands are both rated as needs improvement. They're managed by the same corporate multi-school academy who takes 6.5% of school income. And if you accept that these corporate academies are going to be allowed to run schools, and you have to accept there also has to be competition. 4 years ago, we had the opportunity to open a free school in the town. We missed that opportunity by not finding a site, and I don't intend for that to happen again. So the first thing I'm going to do when you elect me as your county councillor is going to pick up the phone to Stuart Locke, and I'm going to pledge my allegiance. If you look at the free school press release, you'll see my name's at the top of it, giving an endorsement along with Jonathan Shinogli. And I think most of the population growth is in St. Neots East. We're going to be providing most of the pupils. So as a preference, I want it to be in St. Neots East, but we're going to work hard to find a location for that school. I can't believe that in the fastest growing town in the east of England, we can't find a site for a secondary school of 600 people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And over to you, Sam.
Well, I think we're actually getting off to a really good start here, because it sounds like all three of us have pretty much the same view on the first question, which is nice. So I echo that. As I said in my opening statement, I'm a huge fan of choice for parents. I think it's very important. I'm a huge fan of competition. I would love to see a third school here. As the other two candidates have already said, it was the lack of a suitable site being found that caused it not to be given the go-ahead a couple of years ago. Now it's time for us to hopefully find a site. And again, if it can be in the east, if it can be close to Love's Farm, that would be fantastic. But we just need to get that school built.
Great. Well, thank you so much to all three of you on that question on education. We're now going to turn to transport. Marcus, do you want to give us the first question on transport, please?
Yeah, so this is a question from Andrew Jackson Hilton, and he says, it's shocking that we are charged £5 for a single bus fare. If it was cheaper, more local residents would use them. Years ago, we had a bus service through Love's Farm, which was suspended due to the ongoing building work, which has never returned. What will you do about local buses or other local transport provision to support existing residents, as well as all the residents of the new housing?
Okay, I'm not getting the end of that. I'm not sure it's my internet or Marcus's that's disappearing. But anyway, about the bus provision. Stephen, to start with.
Okay, so this is really a question for the Combined Authority Mayor, but I'll try my best to answer it. I completely agree that £3.85 return from Love's Farm to St. Neots is ridiculous. People were complaining when the Conservatives put the parking charges up in town to £2.40. The fact it costs £3.85 to go on the bus is utterly ridiculous and needs to be improved. I think one of our aims in Rejuvenated Town Centre is getting more people into the town and hopefully using less cars so we don't damage the environment so much. So definitely cheaper buses would ensure that people will be able to visit St. Neots more easily and stay for longer. Going in the other direction, I've been campaigning against the degradation of service that's happened to the X5 since Conservative Mayor James Palmer managed to destroy the X5 bus service and cut our commuting connection with our biggest city. So I've got a commitment from two of the mayoral candidates to restore the X5 bus service. And I think if you really want better bus service, you should vote for Nick Johnson, because that's one of his manifesto promises. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next on this one is Sam.
Well, thank you, and you're right that we really do need to, as far as possible, improve bus provision in St Neots. As Stephen's already said, it's a matter for the combined authority. I have had already a conversation with Mayor Palmer about this, and he has committed to review the X5 when the review happens at the end of the year. We will. The important thing, I think, to remember is that because this is a combined authority matter, it's very important to have a local councillor who will be able to best talk to Mayor Palmer if he is re-elected, and he was elected last time with 58% of the vote.
Great, thank you, Sam. And Lara.
I think in terms of the X5, a sign of a good politician is someone who can admit when they've made a mistake. And I think that James Palmer should admit that he's made a mistake and reintroduce something that's similar. But I think the other candidates haven't answered the question in terms of, like, our local bus system is just not joined up. It doesn't serve the purposes for St. Neots. People can't get to the train station in order to use public transport. And I think that local governments should be using their position to pressure companies like Whippet and Stagecoach to provide these services. If private profit-making companies contracted by local authorities cannot provide the services that we need, then I think their contracts should be reviewed.
Great, thank you, all three of you, on that question. Now, if any of you have some follow-up questions in response to what you're hearing, then put them in the chat, addressed to Marcus Pickering, okay, who should be at the kind of pretty near the top of your list on the chat there. And he'll try and gather together any follow-up questions after we've gone through these set ones. So we have a second transport question.
Yeah, so this question comes from Rebecca Fowler.
So Marcus, can you give us that one?
Yeah, so this question comes from Rebecca Fowler, and she says, I note the preferred option is to create a new station south of St Neots around Tempsford or Sandy for the new east-west rail link. Firstly, what are your views of this option over using the existing railway station in St Neots? And secondly, if a separate station is created, how do the candidates propose joining up connectivity between the existing station and the new one?
Right, very good. Thanks, Rebecca. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in this one. So this time we will have Sam to start with, then Lara, then Stephen. Sam.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. As you've probably already seen for the from the East West Rail consultation document, they all the preferred route includes a station at what's being called St Neots West. Sorry, St Neots South. Forgive me. And I'm a huge supporter of that. I think it's fantastic that we're going to have a new station approximately 11 minutes drive from Love's Farmhouse that would be able to quickly and efficiently get Love's Farm and wider St Neots residents into Cambridge. It would also hopefully reduce the pressure on the bus service that goes to Cambridge as well. I think that's really all I'd say about the one, except that I understand that the using the current St Neots station was looked at, but there was it would have been hugely expensive to run the line through there. The most important thing to do is to make sure that there's a linked up either park and ride or other bus service that would run between the stations.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Lara.
I think this project is literally going to change the landscape of our county for the next few decades. And we definitely need the service. But first of all, the project has to be electrified. We have a climate crisis, and creating any project right now that generates carbon emissions is incredibly short-sighted. As an environmentalist in the ideal world, I would love them to be able to use the existing track and station. But I'm also practical, and I don't think that using the existing station and creating a railway line that leaves out of the northeast of St. Neots works right now. I think Bedford residents right now are very worried about extra lines that are proposed in residential areas, and I don't want to see that pressure in St. Neots. A new station somewhere near Tempsford is the most likely option, and that would have a link with the north-south main line. And I feel this is really only feasible, not with park and rides, but we need to have robust bus and cycle paths from St. Neots to the new station. But I guess this also gives us the option of boarding in St. Neots, traveling south, and then changing if we need to. But remember that the proposed routes are not set in stone. Everything can change. In Bedford, they found that out, extra lines introduced that weren't in the consultation. So I really think that your county councillor should be using influence to put pressure on East-West Consortium and to advocate for what your views are and what your concerns are around the new rail line.
Thank you, Lara. Stephen.
Just want to endorse everything Laura's just said. Basically, there's no chance that it's going to be that the extra station is going to be near the current station. The disruption and the cost of that would be horrible. It would be horrible for Loves Farm residents. So I'd support the 4 locations between Little Barford and Tempsford. Those are almost decided. Basically, there's 2 miles between them. They're all quite a long way from Loves Farm, but as Lara said, you could just hop on the train. And that would be an improvement. I do worry about the feasibility, how useful it's going to be for Loves Farm residents. By the time the railway is built, the A428 will be already dualled, and so it will be just as easy to catch a bus or the X5 into Cambridge. And I share her concerns. People driving diesel cars to get on a diesel train to get to Cambridge is disgraceful, because it won't be open until nearly 2030, and that's the time when we're supposed to be carbon zero, and using, even if it's biofuel, that stuff can be used for aeroplanes and boats and other things that we can't decarbonise. So I think I'm completely opposed to a diesel train service running to Cambridge.
Great, thank you very much. I don't know if Becca is here, if you wanted to just say what your thoughts are on this. What do you think should be, what's the answer to your own question? Rebecca, if you are, can you just turn on your microphone?
Hi, yeah, I think I completely understand why it can't be joined up to the current railway. I think it's just looking at the preferred routes. I was looking at the other night, some of them seem to clip past Winchringham Estate, and whether you're in your role, you'll be representing Winchringham as that develops. So actually, are we in, or will you be in support of these preferred routes, or will you be opposing them because of the closeness to those new residents in that new estate?
And do you have a preference, Rebecca? Well, what do you think they should do?
If there's a way of keeping it away from that area of the new estate, I would do it. But it would need to be looked at in detail. And I think Lara's right. I think you need shuttle buses and things to move you across from the main train station down to the new St Neots South, etc. That would work well. Yeah. I know it's quite far away in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for your question. We want to move now to another significant area of responsibility for the County Council, and that is social care. And we've got a question from Toby Street. So Marcus, do you want to read out this next question?
Yeah, so Toby Street's question is as follows. Thankfully, awareness of mental health is probably at the highest it's ever been, but there's still much more to be done. With many more people dealing with anxiety at home, how did the panel envisage supporting the local community as we embrace a new way of living? Would you consider championing mental health expert GPs or support mental health first aiders, for example? And likewise, how do you envisage providing support for teenagers, offering them spaces they feel comfortable within and providing somewhere that they can call their own?
Yeah, thank you so much, Toby, for this. As we heard from David at the beginning, this is by far the largest sort of budgetary area that the County Council is responsible for. So, Lara, what's your response to Toby's question?
This is a huge question to answer in 1 minute, but I'm just going to take the mental health portion. So I think we need to talk about mental health more openly in general. And so I personally have suffered with mental health issues before, luckily found the support I needed, but I truly believe that I would have suffered less if video appointments had been available. I delayed making appointments, I avoided leaving my house. It would have gotten me help more quickly, and it would have removed barriers around receiving help around transportation and childcare. And I think the idea of mental health first aiders and mental health GPs are both really great ideas, especially if they could be done virtually. I think this is one of the lessons that we've learned during the pandemic, that we can't live the same way that we did before. We've learned good lessons, and let's continue with as much in-person medical help as we video medical help as we can, where there doesn't have to be procedures.
Oh, thank you so much, Lara. Stephen.
Yeah, I agree that we've almost won the war on coronavirus, but I think there's a second pandemic of a mental health crisis that is going to cause that's coming our way. I think people have really suffered from a year of social isolation and disrupted relationships. Will support anything that helps deal with that crisis. I think community involvement and mental health first aiders are a great idea. I want to address that second point about places for young people. One of the things that the Town Council is launching next month is its first youth council. I think it's important that we give young people a voice in the town. And in terms of places for young people, one of the first jobs that the youth council has been appointed to is consulting to the Winching developers to guide them in their provision for younger people and teenagers. So I think we need to give young people a choice to decide how the town will develop for young people. It's no good middle-aged people like me trying to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And Sam.
Thank you very much. I mean, this mental health is going to be a huge issue. It always is after any disaster. I mean, one of the lessons that we learned following the Christchurch earthquake was just how bad mental health became. And to be honest, I think we dropped the ball there, and I hope very much that we don't drop it in Cambridgeshire over the next 4 years, because especially for young people, as Stephen and Lara have already said, the social isolation is a huge problem. I mean, the council's already the Conservative group's already announced in our manifesto that they're extending the mental health, extending the mental health support to people between 18 and 25. It's currently below 18, and I'm open, honestly, to any idea that will help our young people not suffer from the mental health issues that we saw in Christchurch. I mean, depression rates would double the national average within a couple of years. It's just awful. So definitely will support any idea.
Well, thank you. Thanks all three of you. And just brilliant. All three of you are being so concise and sticking to time. This is really great. We have another question on social care. Marcus, do you want to read out the second one from Helen?
So this is a question from Helen Tame. Supported living is a feature of both new future developments at Wintringham and Loves Farm East, but neither are scheduled to happen as a priority, and yet there's an indisputable crisis in social care in the community. What commitment from our candidates can we expect to better provide for the most vulnerable within our community? For example, better access to daycare, supported living, or accessible housing?
Yeah, thank you. Stephen.
So I think this is a huge problem. Accessibility for people in general is a huge problem. I don't think any of us can promise to make Urban and Civic or L&Q build lots of accessible houses, which is a pity. If we could do that, they'd all have solar panels and heat pumps rather than boilers. Only the government legislation can do that. But what I want to do is work with developers to make sure that they understand the needs of the community. So I spent yesterday afternoon with a guy called Ross Hovey, who is the accessibility consultant for Lloyds Bank in London. He's a wheelchair user, and he requires 24-hour care. He's offered to meet with me and developers of Wintringham and L&Q, and we're going to try and advocate for them to understand the needs of disabled people in the community. And if we can't convince them to build the houses, build accessible houses, we can at least make sure that the houses that are built properly meet the needs of the whole disabled community, which is quite varied.
Thank you, Stephen. Sam.
I just echo Stephen's point about the need to bring whatever influence we can to bear on the developers of Wintringham to get those units built as quickly as possible. Obviously, there's limits as to what we can do. And the wider county policy, the Conservative group is already rolling out the Neighbourhood Cares project. Which has been a 2-year pilot that has shown some success in supporting independent living, and we're also piloting a falls prevention program that will also hopefully support older people to stay in their homes. I hope I can use my experience with the Age Endeavour Fellowship to look for policies that can really help keep people independent as far as possible and support those who need support.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. And Lara.
I think that people spend too long in hospital and also in an unsuitable accommodation while they wait for the right place to live. And those in need have to jump through lots of different hoops, which seem frustratingly complicated in order to get the care they need. This isn't an area that I have personal experience. And so if a decision on social care was put in front of me as a county councillor, I would look to the members of our community who I know are stuck in these situations, and I would use their advice to make decisions about funding in social care.
Thank you. Thanks again, all three of you. We're coming on to our last prepared question, which is about flooding. But before that, do make sure if you've got another question or a follow-up question to ask, please sort of put something in to the chat. Marcus is saying he's had very few questions so far. So if you have something you want to ask, then do send him in, write in the chat to Marcus, and he'll pick up any questions and sort them out for a few minutes time. So the last question on flooding, Marcus, do you want to read that from Serial?
Yeah, from Serial Hogg. The response of Cambridgeshire County Council to the winter flooding was shambolic by all accounts, with people scrambling for sandbags. What are your plans for designating some areas of the county flooding hotspots or rapid fill? And for example, providing bins in the locality filled with sandbags and starting in St. Neots?
Well, it sounds like Serial is given the solution as well as a question, but what do you think, starting with Sam?
I think that's a really interesting. Suggestion. I would be very happy to discuss it further if I was elected and take it to council or to the relevant agency. On the wider issue, all I can say is that the Conservative group has definitely listened insofar as flooding is concerned. We've allocated 2.7 million more pounds for flooding prevention, and £600,000 more for gully clearances. We need to do more. We need to make sure that we can reduce the effects of flooding as much as possible, and that's what I would be pushing for if I was elected.
Great, thank you so much, Sam. Lara.
I think that the question is really, when I talk about winter flooding, is talking about two different issues. One of them has to do with when the River Ouse is flooding over its banks. And in terms of that, care of the riversides is the responsibility of the Environment Agency, who are working within the budget that they have. And I think they're doing quite a good job with the budget that they do have. But would providing sandbags at locations that the Environmental Agency could identify be solely the County Council's responsibility? I'm not sure. Would it be the morally right thing to do? Yes, I think so. But the other type of flooding that we have in St. Neots is when it rains hard and then the water goes through all of our engineered systems in order to get it away from where people live. The money that Sam has just referred to, that the County Council has sent towards that, is partly due to the years of neglect that the Conservative-led County Council has allowed to happen in our gullies and our drains over the years. So this is something that you need a county councillor who's watching what's going on and who is making the county contractors follow up on their duties of care for St. Neots.
Thank you, Lara. And Stephen.
Yeah, I'd agree that there's been criminal neglect by the Conservative County Council. So since you elected Julie Wisson 4 years ago, each of you has spent over £5,000 in council tax. And during that time, until I got involved, not a single drain was cleared. So that's 5 years of no drain clearance. 60% of the drains in town centre were blocked, and more than 150 reports of blocked drains were deleted. It's criminal neglect. Your county councillors failed you. None of them responded when I emailed them about flooding. And Tim Wiley and I had to do an investigation and a big media reveal to shame the county council into cleaning all the drains in St. Neots. And they did it all in January, and they're going to do it again in May. So we're already on top of this. Tim Wiley and I have flooded the Flood Liaison Action Group, which will be an interface between the community and the local authorities. And we've already put together a plan with St. Neots Town Council to store bags and sandbags at the St. Neots Town Council depot. And next time there's a flooding event, we'll be better prepared. We're going to work on resilience so people understand their own responsibilities to flood their properties. But the Conservatives have utterly let you down. Yeah, you spent £5,000 and not a single drain was cleared, and people were flooded out of their homes because of that. It's disgraceful.
Thank you, Stephen. We can see that this is an area that you're passionate about. So thank you again, all three of you. Now, I'm going to come back to Marcus and ask if you want to bring forward a couple other questions that have come from the floor. So Marcus, over to you.
Yeah, really just a very quick follow-up on the east-west rail. So I think Rebecca was quite keen to hear from the candidates on what their views would be on the routes, which potentially goes directly past Wintering, and whether you support that route or whether you'd favour that route being re-looked at.
Okay, so specifically on that, Lara.
I think we have to be really careful about analyzing what the preferred routes are that have been published. I don't feel like the East-West Consortium is guaranteeing that they'll choose any of those routes. I think that once they have chosen a route, if it's a route that residents of this district are not happy with, then I would take that information back to the County Council and I would represent your views on it.
Thank you. Stephen.
It's a really tough one. If the rail track doesn't go near Winteringham, it's going to cut Abbottsley in half. And Abbottsley is also part of this division. And by missing Abbottsley, it puts Tozen and Yelling in line of the tracks as well, or a mile away from the tracks. So wherever you put it, people are going to have a train going near to their house. I live less than a mile away from between the proposed route as well, less than a mile away from the other train route. It's a really difficult question to answer. On balance, I'd favour the northern routes because I think the damage to Abbottsley would be tragic, but it's a difficult question. And in general, I'm not sure of the benefit of the whole project, if I'm completely honest.
And Sam.
I actually almost entirely agree with Stephen there. St Neots East and Gransden is an incredibly diverse division. It incorporates not only Loves Farm and Winteringham, but also a number of villages and a lot of pristine farmland. I'm also probably more tempted towards the northern routes, and so far as Stephen said, we don't want Abbottsley cut in half. We don't want those villages completely destroyed or gutted. So, but again, it's a real tough one, and it's something that I'll have to discuss with the community and if I'm elected.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sam. Marcus, what other questions you got coming through?
Yeah, so a response from Helen on the question about care. And so her response is, thank you for your responses in regard to care. However, they seem the least well articulated, despite the fact that the largest part of your county budget is allocated for care. Might it be true that care users have the weakest voices and are therefore underserved? And how will you address that and raise the profile of care needs and care shortcomings?
Right, thank you. Stephen.
I think I already mentioned I spent yesterday afternoon with a senior accessibility consultant for one of the biggest banks in the country, who's going to help me in informing my opinions and working with developers. So absolutely, I'm trying for the LGBT community, we formed Pride in St Neots. For the young people, we found a youth council, and I'm perfectly happy to found an advisory body of local people with disabilities to help advise town council policy and my response as a county councillor. I think it's important that we see the world through the eyes of the people that have disabilities rather than our own able-bodied perspective, because it's very difficult to understand all of the troubles they have, all the obstacles they face. And so I'm completely in favour of that. And it's a process that I've already started by reaching out to Ross and some other people like James Kapner. Thank you.
Sam.
You're absolutely right that people in care are often not heard nearly enough in our politics and in our communities. I would be looking to create a committee within our division to really hear from people who are currently not being heard loud enough, and that's I think the number one thing to do is to listen. We need to listen as county councillors to the needs of people and then try as best as we can to provide them.
Thanks. And Lara.
I think this is one of the examples where some of the things that the county council are trying to do might be better devolved to more local bodies. I think that if we can get decision makers closer to the people who are experiencing these issues and some of the funding that goes with that, I think that would be beneficial to local people in St. Neots who are suffering waiting times in order to get the housing and the help that they need.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, really important. Marcus, you say there's a question on transparency.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of people asking about transparency. So Paul and Jeffrey. So I'll ask a very similar question. So you all said you would advocate for greater transparency in the county council. How would you do this? And how will you work with other political parties to form the allegiances that seem to be needed to get things done?
Sam, do you want to start on that?
So the first thing that I would be is that I would be not only the Conservative representative for Loves Farm, I would be the Loves Farm representative within the Conservative group. If the Conservative Party forms holds a majority of the council after the next election, it is vitally important that we have people within the caucus who will be representing the views of Loves Farm. If the other elections remain status quo and we would have a situation where the county council, district council, combined authority mayor and police and crime commissioner would be run by Conservatives. And I would hate for Loves Farm to be left out of the decision making because they're not part of those conversations within the Conservative group. On wider accountability issues, I mean, I believe in accountability very strongly. I've endorsed the fact that the person who I think the question was in reference to is no longer a Conservative member, and I think that actually it shows the system worked and that he was held accountable.
Thank you, Sam. Lara, how do you respond?
First of all, if I were to be privileged enough to sit on the audit committee and I was asked whether I thought that there should be transparency in the proceedings so the public could watch it, then I would vote yay, I would vote yes. I also believe that after the pandemic is over, that as many meetings and subcommittees should be made as video so that the public can watch them both live and recorded. I think that's really important for the accountability of your constituents.
Thank you, Lara. Stephen.
Yeah, if you read the back of my leaflet, you see I've got some key principles, which one is principles over politics, and the second one is collaboration over conflict. If you look at if you tune in like Laura suggested to any of the county council meetings, you'll see political bickering as if it was Westminster. I don't subscribe to that at all. I will work with anybody who will get the best deal for our residents. So I'm not a political person. I do think what's gone on with the Conservatives and Farmgate, I think you should also Google Farmgate after this and see how they've tried to cover up accusations of bullying and improper use of council funds. I think it's disgraceful. They used lawyers to threaten the audit committee not to reveal the report, and I would completely vote for the revealing of the Farmgate report and opening up to the public, because I think that all council business should be open and transparent, and nothing should be hidden behind closed committees, or as little as possible behind closed committees, and nothing should be defended by lawyers. That's not the way democracy works.
Thank you, all three of you on that. We've got time for one last question here on balancing the budget. Marcus, do you want to read this one?
Yeah, so this question's from Ben Pitt. The county council's biggest challenge might be managing its budget against the soaring cost of social care. With a 5% cap on council tax rises, what would the candidates choose to cut from the existing budget? Oh,
this is a tough one. So, Stephen, you start.
I mean, that's an almost impossible question. What I wouldn't do to start with, I wouldn't cap, I would put the maximum council tax increase to pay for social care provisions, because I think it's our responsibility, our social responsibility, to care for people in the community. We managed to, St Neots Town Council, do lots of savings internally. What I'm going to cut, that's an impossible question to answer. I don't think it's a very fair question, to be honest. I'm not an expert on the whole budget. I think internal cuts and efficiencies are the best way of doing it. But I think that putting up council tax to pay for the most vulnerable people in the community is probably the principle I'd adopt. But wherever possible, you want to try and address it by cutting, internal wastage as much as possible. But I'm not a county councillor, and I don't have a good insight to all of what happens at county council.
Lara, how do you answer that one?
I agree with Stephen in some of his ideas. I have a feeling that the more the county council can proceed digitally, paperless, virtually, that there are some cost savings that can be made there. I doubt that would be able to make up the deficit of the amount of money that's actually needed in social care. So in general, I'm unhappy about the cap. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And Sam?
I think I agree that it's an almost impossible question to answer. And I think really if we're going to talk about the long-term funding of social care, I don't think this is something that we can truly solve at a county level. I think this would require some serious work at the national level to really look at the future of funding of social care. I actually think we need to be all working together to lobby the government to look at social care and the future of it.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for those brilliant questions and for your considered responses. I think we've covered a huge amount of a huge number of topics in that, and it just shows us how challenging it is actually to be involved in this council. But now I'm going to give each of the candidates 1 minute for their final pitch and to really go all out to try and get us to vote for them. So we're going to go Lara, Stephen, and then Sam. Lara.
This town has, not unsurprisingly, lost its faith in politics, lost faith in the electoral system that discounts a majority of their votes. Through my work providing money advice to locals, I've gained an insight into a wide range of families in our community with varied financial situations. I aim to represent all of their viewpoints. We cannot afford to continue making decisions that do not benefit future generations. As your counselor, I would advocate forward thinking in all decision making. A lot of the beliefs that I've shared with you tonight are aspirational. They can indeed happen, but they take time and money. And you need a county councillor who's willing to kick the hornet's nest, start asking the tough questions, and advocate for changes to begin. The benefits of these changes won't be felt in our community until long past the term of any councillor. I also hear you and share your concerns. You want to see swift action on the development of a secondary school. You want local buses that suit your needs. You want acknowledgement of the changes that need to happen in our social and welfare systems. And you're concerned about the changes to the landscape around our community. Overall, I believe that local politicians should make decisions for the common good, leading by example with the same compassion that they would show to their neighbor. If I can leave you with one message tonight, it would simply be, please vote on the 6th of May, and it would truly be an honor to represent you on the County Council.
Thank you, Lara. Stephen. Unmute.
Sorry. So I think I'm the only candidate here with a proven track record in local politics. I've represented you for the past 3 years as your town councillor. I've been incredibly visible. I hope all of you know me. I've been the mayor for a year, through the most difficult year in our history. I think I've got a proven track record. You know that I'm going to work really hard. You know I'm going to be really accountable to you. You know that I'm going to discuss my decisions with you. I live on the estate. And I think that it would be really helpful for Loves Farm to elect a county councillor that lives on Loves Farm and who has a proven track record, rather than somebody who lives in Buckton. Thank you.
Speaking of which, Sam.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for chairing the event tonight, Jonathan, on behalf of all 3 candidates. I would all I can say is that I would be humbled to be given the opportunity to represent Loves Farm and Loves Farm, St Neots East and Gransden in the County Council for the next 4 years. I would represent the whole division. I would represent all parts of our community. I would be a voice inside the Conservative group to help us get things done, especially if the Conservatives retain control of the council and the metropolitan mayoralty. And I'd look to support the local community, support our businesses and our people in any way I could.
Great, thank you so much. Well, our time is up. I want to say a huge thank you to our 3 candidates for coming along. Only one of you is going to be elected, but no matter who wins the election, I think we want to really thank you for your willingness to serve your community, to investigate the issues, and to really be ready to sort of put yourself on the line and to be involved in running our county council. So a huge thank you to all 3 of you, no matter who, as I say, wins the election. So there's just 1 week left. If you haven't made up your mind, all of us who are going to go and vote next week, look any further at some of the materials that are out there. But I think the problem of low turnouts is a pretty chronic one around this. And so can I ask all of you to try and talk to your neighbours in the next week and urge them just to come out and vote. I think that is really important. That's the one thing we can all do. Make sure we vote and make sure we get someone else to vote as well. So finally, thank you all the participants for your questions. Thanks for coming. Thanks for engaging with this. And remember, next Thursday, there's 3 things you're going to have to vote on, not just for the county councillor, but also the new police and crime commissioner, and for the mayor of the combined authority, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So do your homework on those other 2 elections as well. But it's been brilliant to have listened to our 3 candidates tonight. So thank you, all of you. Thank you so much to Marcus, who's worked the hardest in setting this up and preparing for it all. And see you all next Thursday at the ballot box. Thank you and good night.